Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, why are you not subscribed to Off the Floor yet? Why are you waiting for me and Greg and others to be aggregated improperly? Get the information right away. It's right there on the host updates, and as well as I'm telling you, that chat with Heat fans. I mean, at 5:13 in the morning, guys, get some sleep. Check it out. Link is right there in the description on the podcast, also on the YouTube channel. $2.99 per month. Once you're there, we promise you won't leave. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. We've got a new sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Valvoline Instant Oil Change. With oil changes complete in about 15 minutes, maintaining your vehicle is just a quick stop on the way to your summer destinations. Here at Five Reasons, we can offer you a link. It's going to be right here in the description of the podcast and the YouTube channel to receive a coupon that saves $8 off Valvoline full service conventional oil changes, or $10 off full service, full synthetic, or diesel oil changes. So check out the description here. Use the coupon. It can also be switched out for some other offers. Again, this is Valvoline Instant Oil Change. Get yourself ready for the road this summer. And now, today's episode.
Down to Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the flow playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. Inspire, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. Check out the episode I did with Brady Hawk, getting you ready for Summer League. Also, he let me rant for about 10 minutes about aggregation. I think I said okay 35 times during that. When I'm upset, that's like what does he call that? That's like a verbal tick. That's something that I do a little bit. Anyway, not upset today. Kel'el Martin is a Philadelphia 76er. If you have been following us, you knew that this was likely going to happen. We've been telegraphing this. Greg actually posted on the Discord the day before. And of course, if you listened to our episode where I told you it was called What's Really Happening with the Miami Heat, you kind of knew that this was the course this was going to take. According to reports, what is the report? And I'm going to explain why this wasn't posted in a tweet by the national newsbreakers. He received 4 years, $32 million. Is that right, from Philadelphia? Is that the report?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. This is a simple situation. His agent effed up. Okay. And we told you in the episode the other day that that's what was going on here. This is not an inexperienced agent. This is an agent who at one point had Kevin Garnett actually won a lawsuit because of the circumstances of Garnett's departure from him. You can actually look it up. It was written about in the New York Times. He's not an inexperienced agent. He does not have a lot of clients now, though. He does have the Martin brothers. Okay. So I'm going to take you through this again, some of what was happening before, just to refresh people's memories, and then we will get through what it actually means for the Heat and whether or not Heat fans should be upset about anything, because I see the goalposts are being moved by some on Twitter. Okay. All right. Kel'el Martin wanted to remain a member of the Miami Heat. Not only did he tell me that flat out late last season in the playoffs, he told others that, and also they went to the Heat to resign. Okay. The Miami Heat had him on a $7.1 million player option for this upcoming season. If Kel'el Martin had opted in, the Heat were allowed, okay, not to rip up the 7.1. Okay, that would have stood. But they were allowed to extend him 4 years beyond that, all right, starting at a 40% raise for the second year with 8% raises thereafter. All right. So if you do a little of the math, you could have gotten upwards of 5 years, $65 million for the total package, including the 7.1 million of the first year. So essentially 4 for 58 after that. Okay. Now, I don't have it 100% that they actually offered that, but I believe they offered that or something close. That's my understanding. Okay. I know others reported it was actually offered. I don't know if they're reporting that based on knowledge or based on assumption, but I'll just leave it at I know that the Heat made a significant offer to keep him. They told his agent, and I said this the other day, they said, we can only offer this now. Okay. Only if he opts in. Because once he opts out, we can't offer him the same deal anyway. And also, we have to move on to other business. There's other things that we need to do. All right. And I know Heath say, well, they haven't done anything. No, it changed once he opted out. Okay. And I can tell you this. Okay. They told him, don't come back and ask for the same thing. It's not going to be there. All right. I was told that the agent came back and asked for the same thing. And they were like, we can't do it. Okay. We can't do it. So there were other options here. Okay. There were other options if he really wanted to return and if the agent had accepted it. All right. First thing, my understanding is that if the agent had come back and asked for the same thing that he got from Philadelphia, the Heat could have slightly beat it and likely would have, even though they are waiting for somebody else to drop. Because right now, the Heat are roughly $7 million under the second apron, which they're not going to go over for the first year. But again, that's the first year. Okay. So with raises, they could have gotten to, roughly 4 years, $32 million. But here's the other thing. There's no state tax here and there's no city tax. There's city tax in Philadelphia too. So Caleb's likely going to pay both. So Miami could have, even the deal that he got from Philadelphia, even now, they could have beaten that. Here's the other option that they had. Okay. He could have taken a 1-and-1 deal from the Heat, kept his bird rights with the Heat, and then got paid over the top of that after the TV deal kicked in. Because again, there's going to be an increase with the television deal, and that increases the thresholds for the tax, apron, second apron, etc. I don't know, okay? And now we can argue about certain things the Heat did. There are two arguments that can be made. One is people can say they never should have offered him that contract in the first place. Caleb coming off of that season with the knee issues that he had may not have been worth what the Heat offered him originally. That's one argument that you could conceivably have. The other argument you can have is, well, they should have traded him at the deadline last year. They should have recouped something for the asset. By the way, you can't have both of those arguments at the same time, okay? You can't say that they were paying him too much. No, okay, look, you have to pick one, all right? But essentially, you can have those arguments. You cannot argue that the Heat lowballed Caleb Martin, okay? So on the subject of them being cheap, in this case, you actually could make the argument that they were a little bit too kind, I guess, on this to offer a player that they developed who was given to them by J. Cole, who they didn't really expect to be a rotation player, who started on a two-way, and to end up offering him that kind of money. I like Caleb as a player. I really like Caleb as a person. I'm just saying that's an argument that you can make, Greg, that maybe they shouldn't have gone so far out there for Caleb. But to make an argument that they fumbled by him not accepting what essentially came to twice as much money, this is an agent F up. And this is what I was talking about the other day about how some agents, it's not just this one, by the way, some agents don't seem to understand the CBA. Somehow that got aggregated as me saying that the Heat don't understand the CBA. They literally tried to explain the CBA to the representation in this case. The representation apparently either didn't listen, didn't grasp it. I don't know. And his client is now making half as much money as he could have made. Great.
I'd say there's a couple things that we need to unpack here. One is that Caleb Martin got some bad advice, and that sucks for him because it appears as if he limited his options versus what they thought the market was going to be for him. So that's tough. But I have mixed feelings also when you think about, I guess, team building and just like what the Heat are getting worse this offseason. They haven't gotten better. And Caleb Martin going to an Eastern Conference rival is not the greatest thing either. So when you just think about it in the context of straight basketball, if fans are throwing the financial stuff out the window, it's a tough pill to swallow to see him go to what you consider to be a rival. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's not legitimate to call them rivals at this current moment. I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out. But I think that he dodged a bullet, frankly, that Caleb didn't take that deal, and they'll be better off for it in the long run, that they didn't offer him what would have equated to 5 years. They probably are better off not having that contract on the books going forward, even though it would have been what looked like a modest number compared to what he was expected to get when free agency started and the rumor mill was churning.
What do you think? Did they dodge a bullet? Because there's going to be a comparison, Alex, to the Anthony Carter thing, where the Heat made an offer to Anthony Carter. I think, and it seemed like a lot of the times, like 3 years, $12 million. I think for him to be the starting point guard. I can't believe his son was just drafted. I actually took a picture with AC and at the draft, and it just makes me feel super old. But the Bill Duffy, who's a very experienced agent, now considered one of the better agents. He actually there was a fax issue. Something wasn't faxed in. This is how long ago this was, and of course that contract getting voided led to Shaq coming to the Heat. In even further back, this wasn't an agent issue, but this was a Heat cap management issue where Juwan Howard was signed in the wrong order, and so the league took him away, and the Heat ended up adding Dan Marley, who probably was a better fit, and doing some other things, probably a better fit for those Zotim teams than Juwan might have been. But Alice, will we look back at this as they dodged a bullet? I mean, would you have been in favor of 5 years, $65 million? It's really 4 for 58, but for a team that is pressed up against the second apron, is debating whether to give Jimmy Butler a max extension, it's a lot, isn't it?
It is, and it really surprised me, not only hearing it now, but when you first, reported it on our Discord server earlier this week. Just the fact that they would be, willing to give him a big multi-year offer like that, because it wasn't just like a bloated short-term offer. Like, that's kind of what I thought they were going to try to do, right? Because it's not like he's older or anything. He's about to be done, but he declined a little bit this year and has, the knee tendinosis. And I think, those are the types of things that prevent you from offering those big multi-year deals. And that's exactly what they did. I've spent so much of the season before the trade deadline talking about, if you are not going to re-sign Caleb, trade him. And that doesn't even mean for a second round pick or two or whatever. I just thought, like, if they really thought he was going to have a mid-level market, which is what his camp thought he was going to have and was going to look for, either re-sign him or trade him. They attempted to re-sign him. And, I guess around February, whenever they made that value assessment, they decided, whatever they could get in return for Caleb wasn't going to be worth it to, hinge on their playoff run. And yes, like, he was worse. But the guy had just come off of an insane run in the playoffs where he was a big value add, was MVP runner up in the conference finals. So I think, now after the season is over, after the season having ended, we can see it a little bit more clearly. But we were just a few months removed from that run, which was insane. So it was more reasonable, after that run for them to think, or for him and his camp to think that they were going to get that. But now it's like, I do think they kind of dodged a bullet there from that offer. I think if they would have been able to kind of circle back and, offer him around 30 million for 3 or 4 years, I think that would have been much easier for Heat fans to swallow, even though that's still kind of a long-term deal. But he is only 28. It's not like, he's nearing the mid-30s or anything. Regardless, I want to give, respect to what Caleb did, right? Shouting out everything he's done in the playoffs. I do think it seems like they wanted to generate another quote-unquote tradable contract with, and something like this, with a proposed offer like this, where you're going to have, a contract that's in the teens, that is easier to trade than, the only contract that they have right now in the teens being Duncan Robinson, who is just essential to what they do on offense. So I just, like, they prefer that, I guess, over having to just replace him with a minimum contract. That's my read on all of this. And then my other immediate reaction is I think they're just going to give Haywood that money. I think they're going to give him around 4 years, 30 mil. I think that's what they're going to pivot to. They need wing and perimeter defense. He offers both in one player, right? And they just lost a couple of the other guys who were getting, helped off of and left open in Caleb and DeLon. So it kind of takes some of the heat off of him, right? Because it's, he'll be one of the only ones now that'll be left open. But as far as the Caleb saga, it sucks for Heat fans and for me because of my history. But just him ending up on the Sixers, I don't think it's something to be upset with the Heat about. If you want to be upset about them offering the 65 mil in the first place, that's a different story, right? But it is what it is, man. It's unfortunate for him, right? I think I kind of feel for him here just because, he lost half the damn contract because of some, stupid stuff, right? And here we are. The Heat, have essentially replaced him with Alec Burks and a couple of rookies and are hoping to get Haywood back. And that's pretty much the offseason at this point.
All right, so I want to address a couple of things here. First, Greg, you're right. I mean, the team has not gotten better this offseason so far. I mean, we're talking about summer league today. We'll see what Larson and Ware and others can add this year. We may look back and say they did get better because of Jovic and Hawkins' improvement and some of the young guys they brought in with maybe higher upsides. But right now, on paper, it doesn't look like they got better, right? Okay, so I mean, we just have to be honest about that. But a couple things on this. The one idea, first thing, I think we all agreed not to trade Caleb at the deadline because Caleb came out of the All-Star break on fire from three.
Playing
and
better.
I mean, he was playing better. And also there's just a lot of revision history here. Heat fans wanted the Heat to do something to push forward at the trade deadline. They did not want them to get worse. That was not, you were not hearing a lot of that. A small minority, okay, but the majority of Heat fans that we deal with were like, they need to make a move to compete now, this year. Jimmy's window, give Jimmy a chance, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, who knew, okay, that Jimmy was going to get hurt in the play-in game or that the Heat would fumble down the stretch the way they did and lose that game in Indiana and all the rest of that. But people wanted the Rozier trade. They wanted something. They wanted them to keep Martin. Now, if they had traded Caleb for a 2032 second round pick, at the trade deadline and like some roster filler, okay, or on an expiring, Heat fans would have been furious. That's the first thing, the majority of them. All right. So this idea again of picking up assets. Here's the other part of this. All right. I've been hearing for the last 7-8 years that they can't fall in love with their own developed players. And now I've got this list and there's some guy who I follow here on Twitter, but like, I'll see if I can find the exact tweet. Going through the list of guys they've lost the last 2 seasons, and I'm just like, I thought these were the guys you don't want to pay. Like this is what I kept hearing, and now again it's we're talking about Gabe and Max. I mean, they were nowhere in the ballpark for Max. I mean that's saying anything else is total revisionist history at this point. And Gabe, I mean, they made Gabe a competitive offer. It wasn't what he wanted. He ended up, again, they offered him 1 more year. I mean, this one, this comes in from at Busy Gabe, who I follow him. He's usually fairly reasonable and stuff. He said, I back this front office 100%. Pat Riley is the best thing to happen to South Florida sports in my lifetime. But to lose Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, potentially Highsmith for nothing is perhaps maybe the most asinine, atrocious, mind-boggling thing the Heat have ever done. I mean, first thing, they haven't lost Highsmith yet. All right. I tend to agree that I think ultimately he's going to be back. That's what this seems to be pushing towards, that, because I was told Spo has some say in this one. And I think for exactly the reason, and Brady's talked about this too, like Spo needs like wing defenders like that. He's the way he's going to run his defense. He needs guys who can guard on the perimeter and the wings, and they don't have anybody. They just don't. Like they don't. I mean, they didn't keep DeLon, and I don't think. I mean, what we saw from Josh the last 2 months last season, I'm not counting on that. I mean, I think Josh can be an effective scorer in a small role. He showed that a little bit last year, but I mean, he's in his 30s now too. But again, Strus, if they had paid Max, and I like Max, okay, if they had paid Max what Cleveland had paid Max, everybody would have said it was the Duncan thing all over again. All right, Gabe. Not his fault, but I mean, did you see last season? Okay.
It is interesting
And
that
Caleb,
they opted to offer Caleb an extra 2 year. Well, actually, no, an extra 1 year than what they
Mhm,
gave the summer before, and not just an extra year, but like considerably more money,
mhm.
considering that, like what I mentioned before, what Caleb was going through with his injuries. And again, I've been a proponent of Caleb for these past couple of years. I did not want to see him gone. I just thought it was really interesting and just surprising. I wasn't expecting that big of an offer from the Heat because of what you're talking about. That they just kind of tended to like be okay with letting these guys get paid and just kind of replacing them, by the margins and relying on their development program to figure out the rest there. So I like what separated Caleb considering his circumstances from some of
Because
these
I
other
think we
guys.
saw I think we saw the Caleb's upside. We saw Caleb's upside in the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think that the versatility and athleticism that he offered you was something that the roster is missing or
Mm.
has been missing. Now, it does appear that they're trying to address that. They tried to address it in the draft with Ware, with Larson, and also with the Johnson signing. So, and then also Alondas Williams, I think, is someone who has a chance to move up here. So, you're looking at least four players, and some include Swider. I don't. Okay, obviously he's more of a shooter.
Is
You're
Kashad
looking at
Johnson the
least four.
Caleb replacement?
I mean, maybe.
Could be.
I mean, maybe. I don't think it's Kane. So it feels like maybe it is, and that's the thing. So it's not like they didn't sort of prep themselves in some way. Also, look, I'm assuming that Hawkes' minutes are going up, not down. And so some of there was I know they looked
Same with
pretty good
Nico.
together at times. And Nico, but I know with Hawkes, they looked pretty good together at times, him and Caleb. But there was duplication there, particularly if you were playing him with Jimmy. Remember, they were going with those Jimmy plus the wing lineups for a period of time. I think that honestly, uh, getting some of these guys out of the way of Hawkes probably will allow him to develop best. And I do think that Jaime's upside probably is higher than Caleb's, although again we saw it in the Eastern Conference Finals. So, but again, I liked him as a player. I know he wanted to stay. I know they wanted to keep him. They valued him. And this is not like people are gonna say, "Oh, well, the Heat are just putting this out after the fact, to cover themselves for not." I'm telling you, I was giving you the play-by-play on this the whole way of what they were doing and what they were planning to do and prepared to do. And it just seems like in this particular case, the representation did not listen to them. Because one of the things that I heard, and we'll get to an ad and then we'll close this thing up, but one of the things that I heard was the Heat wanted to make sure that Caleb understood what they were trying to do. And this is a problem a lot of times, okay, with agents. Is that sometimes the message gets translated a different way. Like they wanted him to know they valued him. And I think they read the market properly this time. Like they read it. Like they didn't think Caleb on the market was going to get what Caleb's agent. Caleb, he didn't. The reports out there originally were like 13 million a year. Then there are other reports that said that they were looking for 15 million a year. He got 8 a year. The
That's
Heat
why I think
essentially offered.
Highsmith is going to come in way under what people expect as well.
I think Haywood's going to come in that 5 million range for the Heat. I'm not. Don't aggregate that because it's not a report. That's just a hunch. I have the same kind of hunch. It feels like again, there's a need for him. I don't think anybody's going to fall to the Heat. Like we were talking about, okay, they were holding it open for DeRozan or something like that. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. Could they re-explore sign and trades for DeRozan? I guess I did say they did call Chicago about a sign and trade. We're told Shaw didn't want the contracts. Now, if that thing drags out and he doesn't end up in Sacramento necessarily, then I guess the Heat could step into that if they wanted to. But again, you got to give him a 3-year deal. Are you prepared to give DeRozan a 3-year deal?
Hold on. You can offer it. There's something. I think it's already happened in this free agency
Mm,
too. You can do it as a 3-year deal, but if you really wanted to, you can make the last 2 years non-guaranteed. It just happened
mm.
recently. I can't remember who it was right now, and someone had pointed that out. So they can be creative or maybe they do 2 years guaranteed, 1 year non-guaranteed. I would say they probably prefer to do one guaranteed year and then just tie it to Jimmy if they were in on this whole idea. But that is possible.
Okay. Well, let's see. I don't think it's happening.
Yeah.
I think the most likely scenario is that it's going to be Haywood, and then Heat fans are going to say we're running it back worse. right?
Hard to
I mean,
argue. It's hard to argue at this point. I mean, this is where we're
uh,
at.
and then right, and then but then if uh, then if we end up with a situation where these rookies really pop in summer league, and I want to talk about that on the other side quickly. One thing you guys are each looking forward to the most for summer league that may change the perception here a little bit. It might, okay, because I think this is their best. This looks to me like their best summer league team on paper, other than the Duncan hero team from Tyler's rookie year. That to me, that team was really good, and I think this is going to be similar in terms of what they're. This is an interesting team that they put together. Like last year's, I was not all in on. And then the one that Haywood was the best player on it, they were trying to feature Haywood. No, that was not a good summer league team. They got a squad this time with high upside guys. I think it's going to be interesting to watch. All right, before we do, I want to mention a great sponsor of the Five Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at Water Cleanup. Water Cleanup of Florida, Michael Robert and his entire team. You can find them at WCUFL.com. Get the preventative maintenance. You see what the flooding's like here in Fort Lauderdale? Yeah. Okay. Make sure you don't have a leak. That'll make things worse. I don't know anything about this stuff, but I do know that. Okay. More water. If you're letting water in, more water is going to get in, right? Isn't that how that works? Also, they'll do the damage assessment for you after the fact. Reach out with you to the insurance company, make sure everything is handled. So again, reach out to them. Both they're in Boca Raton, but they service the entire Tri-County area. As we always say about Water Cleanup of Florida, if you've got the schmutz,
They got the guts.
all right. What are you looking most forward to, Alex, in summer league?
Oh man, I was just gonna pick from whatever you guys didn't pick. So let me switch up my strategy now. Um, I guess if I'm just choosing between Ware, Larson, and Kashad, because those that was really what was coming into mind for me. Ware's got to be number one. Like it's just got to be. You know, you invested a first round pick into him. Adam Simon immediately started getting Heat fans riled up when he called him a 3-and-D center to start out. You know his media availability, and it's like just falling right into what everybody wants to hear. So I expect it to be demonstrated. I don't expect him to be a 3-and-D big year one in the regular season. But if you're talking about summer league, you got to show off what he can do. I think he shows off some of the post game where he just has a tendency to get to closer to the end of a shot clock. I think he's going to be used as a screen and roll big, but I want to see him pop. I want to see him space every now and then. I don't want to see him just planted next to the rim at all times, right? Because of course you do want him to be a lob threat. I'm not advocating for him to only be sitting as a spacer, but I like the idea with him is that he is able to give you both of these things, the lob threat and somebody who could potentially space. So I want to see those things showed off. I want to see the athleticism, and I'm very curious to see just how he moves, right? Because I saw some people said that they, like some of the clips that the Heat were putting out of their practice, that he looks kind of slow. And I just think in general, that's like what you want to see from a 7-footer, right? Like you want to see how well they move on the court. And I think, he was described as a fluid athlete who can move pretty well for a big. So I want to see that. And yeah, I just want to see the full athletic capability there since he's such a different type of Heat pick.
For
What do you think,
me,
Greg?
I want to see the Arizona duo, Pele Larson, Kashad
Mm.
Johnson. I think those are two names to watch along with Zion Pullen. Those are like the guys to hone in on here. I think that the Heat see something in these players, so I'm interested to watch. I do think this is one of their stronger summer league teams with a bunch of guys that have the opportunity to find their place onto the roster in some way, shape, or form, whether it be on a two-way or on a standard deal. So there's a reason for Heat fans to plug into Summer League this year, because a lot of these guys I think are going to have the opportunity to try to contribute, particularly Larson. I mean, I think that there's no reason that he can't slot right in and find his way into some playing time. But this is where it all starts. So I'm interested to see if maybe he gets featured a bit. And then Kashad Johnson is I don't know. Maybe they're going to find the next PJ Tucker, but at the right moment in time, early on, and that would be a great move if he, can pan out in that form. So we'll see.
Yeah, I obviously those guys are the headline guys. I want to see what Alondas Williams can do. There was. I mean, you're talking about a guy who really popped in the G League last year, and has this. He's got like a little. I don't know, he's got like a little aura to his game. There's a little extra. No, it's a little extra. I don't know, maybe I use the wrong word, but there's a little extra to his game. Like there's the athleticism. I like the finishing.
Oh man.
Um, I want to see what develop. Don't aggregate that. I want to see. I want to see what they have there because it feels to me, and maybe they'll tell me I'm wrong. It feels to me like he snuck up on them a little bit. That they started to kind of ride the train a little bit last year, and then
And then
he
they
was
signed a bunch of
around the
guards
team,
right
and then
after.
right. So that's why I want to see what they really think of him, and we'll see how much he gets featured this time around, and what that looks like. All right, so that's our episode for today. We'll be back to recap Summer League and all the rest of that. Make sure you download the Playback app, playback.tv/5RSN, and just
We're
go
gonna
to the
be on
Playback
today at 6:30.
app. I'll be on there at some point. Yes, Playback at 6:30. Yes, this will be up before that. So check it out. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.